Hey everybody, this is Liz LePage here, and today I'm going to be doing a workflow video for all of you about how to process an engagement photo shoot. I have a whole bunch of images here open up inside of Browse, and we're going to be going through some pre-processing techniques that I use to dwindle down my photos. We're going to talk a little bit about how to work inside of Portrait, and then we're going to go into Effects, and I'm going to talk to you about how to create a preset that you can reapply to multiple images. So let's go ahead and get started here. I've got all of my photos ready to go. They're open up inside of Browse. And one of the first things that I like to do when I pull images off of my camera and put them onto my computer or hard drive is I like to rename them. Now I have the first photo selected inside Browse, and on the right hand side in the info pane, you'll see that the photo is called Lusk Engagement, and then it's got a serial number at the end. Lusk is the last name of the couple. It's an engagement photo shoot, and then the serial number allows me to number all of my images. This is really easy to do here inside of Browse. So first, just Control or Command A to select all of your images. I have a folder of files that I had already worked on, so I need to deselect that so it doesn't get renamed here. If there are any photos that you know 100% you're going to completely remove, you're going to delete because they're super blurry, you had the lens cap on, you accidentally shot something and it was super bright and it's just not going to be recoverable, anything like that, you know you don't want them to be renamed, you can omit those here. Most of the time I rename everything, and if I want to, I can delete photos later. Now once you've got all your images selected, just go up to the Edit menu and scroll down to Rename Files. Inside this dialog box, there are a couple of different things you can do. The first is selecting whether you want to use text. So you'll see that right now it says Lusk, and then it's got an underscore and it says Engagement, and that's the name of all of these different files. If you want to, and you open up this dialog box, you can select however you want your file name to be. So we could start out with maybe current name. If you're pulling images straight off of your camera and you want to leave the actual name of the file inside of your new file name, you can go ahead and do that. You'll see that you can select your own custom text, and then there's also the serial number option. A lot of times when I'm working with custom text, I like to come up with something that's very specific. So either the last name of the couple that I'm working with, or maybe both of their first names, then the type of photo shoot that it is. So this is engagement. I made sure I put that in there. If it was a wedding, I would put wedding. If it was a family shoot, family, and so on. That makes it so that if I'm looking for images, and let's say I'm doing a tutorial like this one, and I'm like, hey, I really need some photos of family. I type in family and it'll bring up all of the different photo shoots that I've done that have the word family in the name. So it's a way of using keywords to find your images faster, and I really like to do that. For the serial number, you can actually start at any number and you can type in as many numbers as you want. So I just chose 3 numbers, started with 001, but if you like to have more or less, you can go through and do whatever you want. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll also see that there are plus and minus buttons. If you want to go through and you want to use these to add in more information, let's say that after the serial number, so we're going to choose our serial number there. After the serial number, let's say we also want to add the date. I take a lot of pictures of this couple and I want to make sure that I add in the date information. I can click that plus button and we can come up with some text at the end of this. We'll call it 2016. So we're kind of renaming photos that I've already renamed, but I wanted to show you guys how easy it is to do this. And it's also really important to do this as well. A lot of people leave their files named the way that they are and then can't find them later. And this is one of the reasons why. So take the time out of your workflow to make sure that you rename your images, something really easy to figure out. So once we go ahead and choose this option, I'm going to go ahead and click apply, and I'm going to let this process. All right, so now that my files are all renamed, I need to go through and choose the ones that I want to edit. I have a very simple system of doing this. So first, let's go ahead and deselect all of these using Control or Command D. And In many cases, when I do a shoot, I have different locations or different positions, and I shoot a lot of images of that same location or position to make sure that I get an image where everybody is looking at the camera the way that I want, everyone has good looks on their faces, there aren't people walking behind us, anything that could happen. I like to make sure that I've got a lot of photos to make sure that I get one out of a section. So you'll see that right at the beginning here, we were photographing in this thicket right on the backside of a giant field. And there's about 15 images here that are all inside that thicket. If we scroll down a little bit, there's a couple images in that same thicket from a different angle, and I was photographing a couple of different positions. So I was doing a couple where she was kissing him on the cheek, they were kissing in front of the sun, they were playing around. So there were lots of different options here, but I took a lot of photos of the same position and then moved on to another one. So what I like to do is take a look at these different little sections and choose one or two out of these positions or locations and choose the ones that I think are best. So let's go ahead and take a look at this little subsection right here. I'm going to use the spacebar on my keyboard to zoom in a little bit so I can take a closer look. Now, there are a couple things that you look for, and I think everybody knows this, but I'll just reiterate it. There are a couple things you look for when you're going through your photos. You want to make sure they're not blurry. Sometimes you can't help it. You're moving, you're laughing, they're laughing. You're trying to catch something running and you forgot to change your shutter speed. There's a million different ways that you can forget or change something and your photos end up blurry. So you're looking to make sure that your photos are sharp and in focus. You're looking to make sure that both of your subjects have good looks on their faces. People sneeze, people cough, people end up laughing and they look kind of funny. They end up closing their eyes. Talking sometimes makes people look strange. So you want to make sure they've got good looks on their faces, and then you also want to make sure that it's the right scene that you're looking for. So this photo is blurry. It's not going to get a rating. And that's what I tend to do is anytime I like a photo, I give it a 1-star rating by hitting the 1 key on my keyboard. That's it. So this won't get a rating. It's blurry. I'm going to go ahead and use the arrow keys to move on. This one is all right, but I'm not 100% sure I like the look on her face. She looks like she's about to close or open her eyes. If we go to the next one, this one looks a little bit better. She's got both of her eyes open a little bit more. I like the look on his face a little bit more. So this might be a 1-star rating. If we keep going through, he was about to sneeze because he had really bad allergies. So the next couple of photos are him trying really hard not to sneeze. Those probably won't end up in the mix. Then they got kind of distracted by a dog that was walking by because we were next to a hiking trail. So there's going to be a whole bunch of images where they're not paying attention or not looking at the camera. So as I go through, I've chosen a whole bunch of images from different areas that we shot that I really liked. And it's usually 1 or 2 in a little section, and those are the ones that I want to edit. As I scroll through this folder of images, you'll see that there are, every couple of photos, there's an image that has a 1-star rating. And this is a photo that I ended up liking that I want to maybe edit. Now, once I've gone through and done that, I want to filter out the images I don't want to edit and just look at those 1-star ratings. So on the left-hand side of my screen, I'm going to select the Filters tab over here, turn that on, and then I'm just going to go through and click the 1-star. Now I can look at all of the 1-starred images that I really liked. Now, most of the time when I work with engagements, I like to do about 10 to 25 photos. And it's a large range because it depends on the couple, what they're looking for, and how many shots I ended up getting. For this couple, I'll probably edit about 15. This is obviously more than 15 photos. You'll see that there's a little section right here, and the couple was kissing behind her hat. I really liked this photo, and they really liked that photo. There were quite a few that were in focus and I liked the way that they looked, so I 1-starred all of them. I'm going to have to go through and figure out which one I am actually going to edit. But I like to have more options instead of less. So this is just kind of how I work. Sometimes to show that there's a photo I really like to edit. So this last one is the image that I probably will end up editing. I'll go ahead and give that a 2-star rating. So then I know that that'll be the one that gets the processing treatment. There's a whole bunch of pictures of them with their dog. I probably won't end up processing all of them, so I'll go through and select the 2 maybe that I really like and 2-star those as well. So sometimes that'll help me dwindle down even further. Now, when we're ready to actually edit an image, I'm going to go ahead and take this photo right here, and I'm going to start out inside of Portrait. Now, on the right-hand side, we're going to go ahead and just click the portrait icon here. I want to make sure that I edit a copy of my original image. I'm working with a couple of JPEGs from this shoot. If you're working with RAW files, you won't have the option to edit your original. It'll just be edit a copy. I also like to make sure that my file format is set to Photoshop because it supports a layered workflow and it allows me to access smart photos. Now, smart photos allow me to re-edit my images, and that's really important, especially when I'm working with portrait retouching. If I can't go back and readjust my portrait retouching, it's difficult because I have to start my image all over again. Sometimes if I show clients my images, they say, could you do a little bit more? I'm a little, let's say, embarrassed about my acne. Or I do a little bit of retouching and say, would you mind toning it down a little bit? It's a little too much for me. I'd like it a bit more natural. And so this gives me the option to choose which way I need to go if my clients ask me to readjust. So the Smart Photo re-editability is really important to me. And then you can go through and choose your color space, bit depth, and resolution depending on what you're going to do with your images. Now, once we go ahead and click OK and the image transfers into Portrait, it'll start out by finding the faces in your image. Now, we're not going to end up editing the man in the top right-hand corner of this image. We're just going to be focusing on the girl in the foreground. And you'll see that it automatically recognized that her face was there. So we're going to click inside the green box to take a closer look. We need to go through and select her facial feature points, and you'll see at the top of your screen there's actually instructions for how to do this, which is really great. So we start by clicking on the center of the left eye, the center of the right eye, the left corner of the mouth, and the right corner of the mouth. Then go up to the top right-hand corner and click Done. It'll set up your facial features, and it'll give you points to adjust around the eyes, lips, and teeth. Now this image, it did an okay job, but I need to go through and re-edit it. She's at a strange angle, and so the program is looking for more of a straight on, and I think it's a little confused by the fact that she's tilting her head like this. So I need to go in and adjust the points. On that left eye, I want to make sure that we click and drag to the edge of the whites of her eyes there, and then we're going to readjust the top and bottom so that they fit her eye a little bit better. And then that right point is all the way over, so we're going to go ahead and pull that in. On the right eye over here, we're going to pull that far left point out, and we're going to pull that top point up a little bit to get a little bit more of the white of the eye. For the lips, we want to pull the bottom point to make sure that we're getting all of her lips. And then I also want to pull the middle bottom point here to make sure that I get all of her teeth, because I am going to want to whiten her teeth. Now, outside of that, that's great. My points are done. On the left-hand side of the screen, there's a dialog that's popped up, and it shows that right now I'm adjusting the points around my facial features. There's also an option called Adjust Skin Area. This is really, really important. This is where the skin retouching actually happens, and it shows that it creates a mask for you of where it'll be doing that retouching. Just like any other mask inside of ON1, you can go through and adjust this by using your brush tool. And when you select Adjust Skin Area, it automatically gives you a brush. And the best part is, it automatically also uses the perfect brush. You can turn the perfect brush off if you don't want it, but it is so good for working inside a portrait. Now, up in the tool options bar, you'll also notice that the mode is set to not skin. I need to paint out the hair on the top of her head to make sure that that doesn't end up getting softened. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'll zoom through the next couple of moments because I'm going to make a very particular mask here for my subject, so you don't have to watch me go through and edit this entire mask. All right, so I've gone through and I've created this facial mask. You'll see that I included the eyebrows and the eyelashes outside of my face mask, and part of the reason why I did that is because they look a little funky when you soften them. So I highly recommend you go in and you omit those when you're creating this face mask here. Now to actually go in and do the retouching, we want to hide this mask. So I'm going to go back over to that dialog on the left and choose Adjust Points. Now, when I go over to the right-hand side, it'll hide those points for me and I can actually take a look at her face. The defaults for this are really great. It adds about 50% blemish removal, a little bit of smoothing, and evenness to even out her skin tone. It goes in and adds some whitening to the eyes and the teeth, a little bit of detail to the eyes, and it's great. The default is awesome. And if I look at my before and after, it's very subtle, but it does a really awesome job. The only thing I want to do for her is add a little bit more evenness to her skin tone. She's got a little bit of redness there, and so just by pumping up that evenness slider, I can remove a little bit more of that unfortunate redness there. She doesn't have a lot of blemishes that I need to go in and remove. This is a really, really fast portrait retouch. So now that I'm done and I've gone through, I want to jump into effects. On the right-hand side, I don't need to go back into Browse and then jump back into Effects. I can literally just click on Effects right here in my little module selector, and it'll go straight into that program for me. It's going to save all of my portrait adjustments in my re-editable PSD, and then I can go in and add my effects. Now let's go ahead and zoom out here so we can take a look at our whole image. And then on the left-hand side of my screen, I have my little preset chooser closed. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to take a look at a couple of the presets that I might want to add to this image. So we'll go ahead and select our Presets tab, and I'm going to go down to the Faded and Matte category. I love faded and matte presets, especially when it comes to working with weddings and engagements. It's definitely my favorite way to go. So I want to open this up in my quick view browser so I can take a look at a full screen view of all of these presets here. So we'll go ahead and click that option. And this is a lot easier for me to take a look at what's actually going on. Now, each one of these presets, it's going to be dependent on what you're looking for in your image. Everyone is a little bit different, and everyone has different ideas for how they like their matte presets, whether they liked it softer, whether they like it stronger, whether they like black and white. Everybody is completely different. One of my favorite matte presets is this one called Intense Matte Warm, and I use it all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that to apply it. Now it goes through and it adds a couple of different filters here. And the best part about working with effects is that I can go in and I can re-edit any of these filters that I want. So if this is too strong, there's a vintage filter on top that adds that warm kind of yellowy glow in all of the highlights. And I think it's a little too much for me, and especially too much for this image. So I can select my vintage layer and just lower the amount a little bit. It's just a little much for me, so we're going to go back down so it adds a hint of warmth, and that's about it. I can also go in and I can make adjustments to any of the others. There's a bleach bypass layer that is the start of this preset, and if I go ahead and click on it, you'll see that it just goes in and it adds some contrast to the image. Maybe it's a little too much. It adds some brightness as well. I'm going to lower that brightness slider. It's just not as much brightness as I really want. A little too much contrast there. I want to soften it a bit more. So I've gone through and I've readjusted 2 of these filters, and it's going to change the way that this preset looks. The other thing that you can do is you can add filters on top of existing presets, and I do this all the time. For this image, I really want to add some dynamic contrast. The couple itself is a little soft just because of the way that the matte preset works. So I'm going to go ahead and add a filter. And again, we're customizing this preset here. And I'm just going to choose dynamic contrast. Now we're going to lessen the amount of contrast just a little bit. So we're going to drop all of these sliders down so they're not quite so intense. Just a tiny bit, not a lot, and that's already a lot better. They're starting to look a little bit crisper. If you need to add a mask to any of your presets, you can go ahead and do that. The mask doesn't carry over with the presets. You have to individually add that into your images if you want to. I don't need a mask for this image. I like the way that it looks, so I'm pretty much ready to go. Now, before I exit effects, it's really important that I save this preset for use later. So up in the preset drop-down menu, I'm just going to choose Save Preset. I'm going to call this Lusk Engagement Matte. That will help me remember what this was actually for. Doesn't mean I can't use it for other photo shoots. This will be a preset that I'll probably use for something else, but I've customized this. I like this a lot better. I added in that dynamic contrast. This is going to be great for all of these photos and maybe even more. And this will be a way for me to remember that. I can pop it in a category as well. I've created some of my own, but you can go in and you can add them into any of the pre-packaged categories. So if I want, I could add this into that faded and matte category, which is really cool. I'm going to go down and I'm going to put this into portrait presets. And then you can type in a creator and a description if you'd like. Once I go ahead and create it, I'm good to go. I can exit out of the program. So we're going to go ahead and save our image. It takes a little bit longer for those smart photos to save just because they've got so much stuff going on with them. It has to save all of that information from Portrait NFX. So it will take a little bit longer than a normal PSD or a JPEG. And then you'll see right inside of Browse, I have my original photo and my new edited version. So we can go ahead and take a look here. This is what we started out with. And this is the edited version from Effects. Now that I have my preset, I can go in and I can batch process a whole bunch of images if I want to. I can go in and individually edit more photos. I can also go in and I can re-edit this image later as well. So maybe the matte is a little too intense, or I want to add a mask with my dynamic contrast layer. I have that option because on the right-hand side, you can see under Smart Photo History, I have my portrait and my effects, and I can just double click and jump right back into the program. I'm also now ready, if I want to show this to my clients, to go down to the bottom right-hand corner and choose the export option. I can export this and send it off to them in a size of their choice. So let's say she wanted to update her Facebook profile picture. I can size this down so that it's specialized for web uploads. So there's a lot of different options and ways that we can go, but this is a pretty good view of how I go through and edit an engagement photo shoot.